Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contingency Plan Podcast. My name is Jedi Master David, and with me, as always, is Darth Austin.
Hello, everyone.
Well, folks, back again, doing more books, because we know that that's the most popular thing that we do is books.
Especially High Republic.
Yeah, I know we've kind of talked about this before, but High Republic has just not been very happening out in the...
It's flat. Very flat.
It does seem kind of flat, doesn't it?
And I went into this book saying, no matter what, and almost to the extent where I'm like, I'm just going to lie to myself here. I'm going to be positive about this book. And I hated this book the first half. But I ended up actually liking it at the end and during my reread. It's a nice... I'm not giving my rating right away, obviously, but good breath of fresh air in the High Republic space, other than in comics. Probably the best book we've had in a while, truthfully.
You heard it here. He hated it. He wants to burn all the books.
But then I retract that statement as they're burning.
No, don't burn them all. Oh, man. Yeah, so we're going to pop in here and, get into a little High Republic. So from a timeline sense, this is kind of happening at around the same time. And
like
then
maybe a month before.
Well, it's kind of the same-ish time as our last book, Fallen Star, and then slightly after the events. So it spans before and after Fallen Star. And we kind of catch up with a couple of characters that, to be honest, we're not all that versed in. And we'll talk about them as we go along. But I suppose we'll just do a hard stop here. And how was your week?
My week that is only half over. Not bad.
Well, I mean, cumulatively, from Wednesday to Wednesday is still a week.
Sure. Yeah. I can't remember that far back. Come on now. That's like asking what I ate yesterday.
What'd you eat yesterday?
I'll tell you at the end of the podcast. No, not too bad. Can't complain. Weather's starting to shift a little bit. Been able to enjoy being outside, go for some walks and whatnot, and just still preparing for school. Hopefully starting the next few weeks with that and getting all the application stuff done. Had my interview after our last recording, and that went well. And not a whole lot going on, really. It's a weird time of year. I don't do a whole lot end of February, beginning of March. It's definitely just one of those placeholder times, just waiting for that decent weather to come back and get back out into the fun things of the season, like boating and camping and whatnot. So still waiting.
Yeah, and weather has been picking up a little bit here in Ohio. Cold mornings, but temp definitely does raise up a bit. So, yeah, it has been nice to kind of get out and, just be in it a little bit. And then the weekends normally smack us around a little bit, but it's supposed to be a pretty nice weekend. So yeah, that's good. Getting the school going and everything, so you can be a big high-powered computer guy. Things.
Yeah, I'll make the new Skyrim.
Well, it's not even about Skyrim. It's about Elden Ring. Have you seen playthrough of Elden Ring? Dude, that game is massive.
I've watched a little bit. I'll tell you what, that game's like a 150-hour game if you actually dive into it. And I'm debating on buying it with school coming up, everything. I don't know if I want to sink the time into it, but it's definitely looking like it'd be fun. Everyone's already marking it as game of the decade. So,
yeah, and I one of the streamers that I put on sometimes, for like background, they've had, I want to say it's something stupid like 72 hours of gameplay that they've went through, and they're still discovering stuff, but they're and it's just the Djibouti Dubs guys, Djibouti Studios, or whatever they call themselves on Twitch.
They can be a bit lethargic with their stuff, though.
Well, they like to discover all the secrets, so they're constantly like looking around for anything and everything that could happen in the game. So sometimes you want to, will you just go?
Yeah.
Just do it, do a thing. But
they get distracted in a conversation or just standing there for a minute.
which is fine. But yeah, no, it is looked really, really good. I have no idea about the lore, the whole, George Double R, Martin, whatever he did, I don't know, but gameplay looks pretty solid. There just seems to be like so many attributes you can pick up, armor sets, and it doesn't. It obviously has roots in Souls games, which I've never really been a Souls game. I mean, because they're hard.
They're brutal.
They're brutal. And this has obvious roots in Souls games, but it's like it's more. It's update. You can jump.
Yeah.
You have a mount. You have a mount that you can ride.
Big upgrades in the gameplay. You can actually jump.
Yeah, it's wild.
There's stealth and everything in it. My only fear getting into a game like that, and it was kind of like that with Fallen Order, even though I loved the story, is I don't want to have a game be super long because I die a lot. And I'm not a terrible gamer, but like Fallen Order for some reason kicked my butt. I died a lot, even on one of the lower difficulties. I just couldn't get it. And it took twice as long as it should have for me. And I don't want to sink that kind of time into a game.
Sure. Well, and the
just
other
get
thing,
frustrated.
The other thing about Elden Ring, you don't have easy mode.
No. You have
it's
what they
one
made.
mode, which I respect. I mean, I get that. I know that there have been a lot of people who have been complaining about where's the easy mode. It's like there isn't. That's not the game. It's like this is not the game for you. And
It's not Call of Duty.
No, and I've actually seen a lot of that easy mode stuff crop up here and there where people are almost demanding easy modes of games. It's like, look, not every game's for you. And I understand sometimes people just want to enjoy the story, coast through something, enjoy the art, whatever, but it's not, I mean, not everything has to be made for everybody,
Yeah, that's what streaming is for. I mean, watch someone play the game if you're not competent enough. And I've noticed in like picking difficulties lately in games, typically either medium, which would be normal difficulty, or the next up, there's usually in parentheses the way it was intended to be played. Which to me as a developer would be super frustrating because I would want to highlight that even more. It's like, this is the game that we made.
Yeah.
Not dumbed down, not nerfed like crazy. Play the game this way or don't play my game.
Yeah, not one of those, help me, mommy, the level's too hard.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't have that growing up with like Pokemon or anything. Granted, those weren't super hard games at the time, but our generation didn't have difficulty settings.
Well, yeah, not really. I mean, most of the stuff was pretty much just, we played a lot of Sega Genesis and then,
even like getting into like PlayStation, like Tenchi, stealth assassin games like that, that didn't, you had a rating system, but the game was as difficult as it was designed to be. And whether you did well or not is up to you. Your creative brain actually got flexed a little bit with that.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously we'll kind of cut this off here, but I will say that the only other thing that I really respect about it is it looks like they really made all the classes like really interesting. Like if you want to do luck build, there's certain things that are really cool. You want to do a dex build, there's stuff that's really cool about that. And if you intermingle a couple, you can sort of make your own Goldilocks zone character that goes for you. I've always been a hack and slash. I just want to go in there full bore tank and just roll. I've never been like the magic guy or you want to heal? No, I don't want to heal. I want to smash, okay?
You want to be the cleric? Come on, someone needs to be the cleric.
No, but they do seem to have a lot better incentives to do other paths which makes replayability interesting.
And I do think that game has a game plus, so you have that option. But I had a YouTube suggestion because I've been watching reviews on it lately, trying to decide if I want to buy it. There's this channel that does a bunch of builds for the game, and one was just like a samurai build.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of cool how in-depth you can get with it, not only just in your class abilities, your attacks, but like they give you specific armor to make you look like a samurai, weaponry, and you get a longbow and everything, and you can really jump into that game and role play almost like D&D in a way, like you can get really immersed into it.
Yeah, I've heard that sort of D&D term thrown around for this as well. So, yeah, very cool. Elden Ring is seemingly a 10 out of 10 for most people, I would say, except those who want, an easier game, which I get, but that's just not this game. So there we go.
Yeah.
Not really much on the Star Wars news front, just to kind of change gears a bit. Obviously, we're all waiting anxiously for Kenobi. You sent me what is it? Honest trailer. What is the YouTube channel?
The Book of Boba Fett honest trailer, guys.
Yeah. So the honest. I mean, I've been watching them for a long time, and I watched it before you sent it. But yeah, that was pretty funny. They made a lot of fun of the Vespa kids, and really, highlighted that whole. Well, what was it? If you thought it was bad, then it gets saved by Mando or whatever, So that was kind of a funny one. If you haven't watched that, I think they're definitely worth a watch. I mean, they're a big channel. They have all the sponsors and crap like that. But yeah, they're it's like them and bad lip reading. It's like you wonder how they get away with it. Well, they've made deals. I mean, what do you think? They're basically an ad agency for whatever it is that they're doing. And it's
not only that, they're actually advertising for whatever movie they're making fun of or TV shows, so they get even more revenue from that, I'm sure, even though they're kind of spoofing them. But
no doubt.
Yeah, we don't have a lot more news other than that. I do know that we had some announcements like final build walkthroughs for the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, like full character list and everything.
Which should have been out like last year, right?
Last year, like 2-3 years ago. I mean, they've been making that game for a long time, and it does look like they've put a lot of effort in. Like, it's probably gonna be a fun game.
Well, seemingly massive. I mean, it's
but good God, basically. Just release the thing. It's done. Like 2 months ahead. I think we still have. Is it April or May? It's coming out.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, so there we go. No big news, no big speculation. We're not real big into the clickbait speculation anyway. We're not going to zero out here, but
yeah, the MZs.
So I suppose it's time to just dive into our book here. What was it called again?
Oh, it's just a super cool name, man. I mean, it's so awesome.
Yeah, Midnight Horizon, Daniel José Older, who's been around for a while. He should sort of know what the deal is. Kind of have old Master Comac Vitus and Reith Silas on the cover. Pretty cool cover. Mm-hmm. I'll give him that.
Yeah. We also, for those of you who are in Audible, we kind of mentioned this last week. We don't have Mark Thompson.
Yeah, or Robert Petkoff. Yeah, we have a completely different narrator.
Nice change of pace. I think we're just a little personally burnt out. Love Thompson to death, but he's been super dramatic lately, and we've just listened to too much of his dramatic stuff at once, I think. So nice change of pace there. The book's a little jarring in Audible form. We kind of talked about that ahead of time before we started, and we won't get into it too much, but definitely better than the last book. Mm-hmm. If you're going to listen to it, it won't be as bad.
So the narrator's name is Todd Haberkorn.
Yeah, and he didn't sound very familiar. Has he done much?
I mean, I can click on his name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had already done that. My bad.
I mean,
to put you on the spot.
No, you're good. He has a list. I don't see anything Star Wars wise though. Yeah, just a lot of stuff that I'm not really familiar with. I will say that I didn't really think that his voice fit as well in the beginning, but it grew on me. It grew on me as the book went along. Yeah, he's got quite a thing here. Nothing I recognize. But yeah, I think that they employed him for a little bit more of the younger, because his voice is definitely younger, more reedy, more trebly.
Yeah, we had a lot of female characters in this too that kind of helped with, and some younger male characters.
Essentially, everyone is basically a teenager.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Kind of weird with Comac, I felt like, because he's kind of portrayed as a bit of an older, raspier character in the other. Again, that's a Thompson thing. We're just used to that.
Sure. And I mean, we did have we obviously had two Jedi Masters in this book. Comac was one. The other is Cantum Psi, who I don't know if this is the first non-binary character, but they are a non-binary character. And I think if I remember the descriptor, oh yeah, here's a picture. They were the one with the mutton chops. You remember I think it was Crash who was like, yeah, the long-haired one and the one with the mutton chops or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And Master was Yoda. Master was Yoda.
Right. Yeah.
So they learned directly from Yoda, which was pretty neat.
I know we've all had our moments with Yoda, but typically any master that comes from the lineage of Yoda's training is typically really awesome. I mean, think of Windu and Dooku and everything. It's always satisfying to see another one of his pupils, and Cantum did not disappoint at all.
No, I would say not. So just to kind of get a little bit into our story, it is largely set on Corellia. So Corellia, as Corellia has always been, is a massive shipbuilding planet. And for the Republic, they're building a lot of their long beam. What did they say at the end? Like 13 engine long beams, 13 engines. Okay. Got to get a little
old
little
Ram
OP
really
there.
got excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. We see Ram,
John Ram.
Yeah, Johnny Ram, who we didn't really read about. He was in Journey to Crash Point or something Crash Point. We didn't get into that one. That was definitely a young reader, and I think we just kind of skipped it. And that would have been in sort of congruity with Rising Storm. So we briefly saw Ram in Rising Storm. But I will
say one thing is, in general, all the High Republic books typically do a good job of just briefly summarizing the backstory of a character you might not have known a whole lot about. So, I mean, jumping into this book, I didn't feel like Ram was this new mysterious character to me. I mean, we got a good bit of detail on him. So,
yeah, I would say so.
It wasn't too jarring not going into that book first.
True. So we do start on Starlight Beacon, and we kind of have this congregation of Padawans, Ram and Wreath, Lula Talisola, and a Force sensitive but not a Padawan, Zine Morala, who you said you recognized her, and I think that the main reason was we were thinking about doing some of the adventure comics, but then we just kind of were like, nah, it's not. But I think that she was in sort of in those
mentioned that she's like mentioned in Rising Storm, and I might have looked into the character a bit for that book after she was mentioned. But yeah, we hadn't really gotten into the adventure series, and after learning about her a bit, it might be something we look at eventually. We've got too much going on right now for that. But
yeah, maybe. But I do think that the backstory is somewhat interesting, basically coming from a culture that using the Force effectively makes you a demon. So, then their planet was a part of the Great Disaster, and it kind of opened things up a little bit. But anyway, so we do have a couple of stories here, but we start off at Starlight Beacon, and we're effectively going on missions, and one of the missions is that there could be possible nihil on Corellia. And we meet Crash, who is a bodyguard, and her name, and I don't remember how this is pronounced, so because it's Alys, alias Angua, maybe.
Yeah, it's only mentioned like once in the entire book.
It's like at the end.
Yeah.
So
barely caught it.
Right. Now she is Corellian. She grew up as like a bodyguard in the bodyguard business. Her mother ran a bodyguard outfit on Corellia.
She had just taken over like a year prior with this outfit.
Right. And, they're tasked with bodyguarding for all the bigwigs. And essentially we open this book up with two of her members, two of her bodyguarders. Prybolt, and I have no idea what the other guy's name is. It wasn't really important. No offense. But
Death Stick guy.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, they actually had death sticks. But effectively a job gone wrong, and we think Prybolt is killed. We later learn that he indeed was, and there are Nihil here, and seemingly one of the founding fathers of Corellia, or was it founding? It wasn't founding fathers. It was
like
city fathers or something.
Yeah, city father.
Whatever. And is presumably taken. So this footage that was taken by Prybolt made its way to Starlight Beacon, and the Jedi that are on Corellia have been all busy. They've been sidetracked. There's nobody available. So we send Reith Silas, Comac, Ram, and Cantum to Corellia to see what they can do. And they're met with resistance. The town mayor or whatever that prime minister or whatever title they have, very resistant to help. There's a lot
negotiations weren't good.
No, they weren't good at all. And seemingly we're pretty fast into the action. Ram and Reith kind of go off on their own. They meet Crash. Crash kind of uses them a little bit. She gives them the one credit, because Jedi don't take money. And they're kind of going undercover a bit. There was at one point where they were, I don't remember what the title was, but they were like these cult children who apparently had their tongues ripped out, like something skulls or whatever. Was it something skull or whatever?
The Red Skull. I don't remember.
It doesn't. It was a brief like passing reference that I'm sure means something somewhere else, but I don't care enough about it to care. It was a disguise for the sake of the book, and which I do think is interesting. So we have Padawans kind of going off on their own, the Masters kind of going off on their own. And
which is odd, don't you think?
It is a little odd, but we do realize that Comac has been having some trouble here. He's been having some trouble ever since the, really Rising Storm, the fair disaster. And he and Reith have been, sparring over and over again. Reith is getting better. Comac isn't. Comac's talking a lot with, Orla Jareni, who we know is a way seeker. And there are seemingly some doubts that are rising in Comac's mind that he just can't seem to get past. And throughout
Which is something interesting just to bring up Orla in general. Mm-hmm. Doesn't it seem like this book was kind of disjarring on when they start talking about Orla's death? Mm-hmm. Or was that just me?
Yeah.
Because it kind of seemed like it was before the disaster really occurred in Falling Star that they really started talking about it. It's just odd timing.
Yeah, I get that. I can see where you're going with that. But just to continue, Cantum does help. I think they really do help Comac.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
Yes, definitely. Just kind of their backstory alone helped him, well, not to jump too far ahead, obviously, but helped him make a lot of decisions. And were you?
It was, honestly, it was probably my favorite part of the book.
Yeah, same here. I kind of wish we would have gotten a little more reaction out of Reith, which seemed kind of weird. He was pretty quiet about it. Of course, it was right at the end, like 7 minutes left in the book, I think.
Sure.
But, So do you want to just go ahead and throw it out there?
Yeah, might as well. I mean, effectively, Cantum was an apprentice of Yoda, and they were having doubts. They met an acrobat in a traveling circus and fell in love in quotations. You know how that can be. And they decided that maybe their path wasn't with the Jedi. Maybe they weren't coming up with answers. And Yoda effectively said, you got to give yourself to the Force. You've got to kind of give it up to the Force and just flow, sort of, is the way I took it. Well, throughout this story, they leave the Jedi Order, effectively. Leaves a saber with Yoda. And then for, I think, did they say a year? It was like a year, right?
Yeah.
For a year, kind of go off with this circus. Well, the acrobat, who I don't remember his name, although I remember it starts with an A. I want to say like Antar or Antum or something like that, but it doesn't matter. It's a passing character. That character, well, they part ways eventually, but Cantum, I keep having to look at that name. I don't know why it doesn't stick in my head.
Yeah.
But Cantum is very accepting of this. It's like, yeah, I guess it is time. Well, upon continuing to sort of travel, and I thought this was kind of a weirder part of the story, but okay, comes across some orphans playing in a field, and 2 of the orphans were taken by a bird,
that Yoda was kind of taking care of, essentially.
Well, I think that was later. That was a little later on. That wasn't.
Was that?
Yeah.
Was that not the same beast?
No. Yeah, Yoda did have something that were. Anyway, I guess we'll talk about that. It was kind of gross. But so this bird vulture thing takes 2 of the kids, a boy and a girl, and Cantum. I didn't have to look it up that time. I almost did though.
What's the last name?
Sai. I remember that because it's 2 letters. It's S-Y. Runs after, and long story short, is able to, with the Force, save the girl. However, and interestingly enough, the boy also survives because the girl, mimicking Cantum, suspends the boy's fall because the bird drops him. That's how the bird kills people, I guess. It drops you on rocks and eats you, I guess, and it gobbles you up. It's like a fairy tale thing. So we learn that this young girl is Lula Talasola, who is basically been a character in the adventure comics as well. We don't know much. I don't know much about her. I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, and not knowing much about her because I don't either.
Yeah,
I didn't read the comics on my own. Very interesting character.
Extremely interesting character.
I'm really excited to see what they do with this character because seemingly super overpowered.
Well, think about
just
that.
Just a prodigy.
Yeah, strictly on instinct and based upon literally believing, pure belief that, oh, I see this person can suspend my movement. I'm going to do the same thing. And literally having enough pure belief, obviously an affinity to the Force, but without knowing it, instinct and pure belief is able to save her little friend.
Which, not getting into anything super heavy, kind of makes you question a child with obviously a big affinity with the Force. Realistically is stronger than even Yoda because of just pure belief. You don't have to even question for a second, you can do this. So it's just a matter of what your power level is at that point.
And I think that it does kind of go into this whole why we don't take older children or older people in general.
Yeah.
Because that belief that you can do it through the Force is probably gone. You're more realistic. But this kid, off the charts. So Cantum brings the child back to Yoda, and this is where we get this weird scene where one of whatever Yoda's watching pops out four babies, and he's for some
suspending them all until the mother can fly again, and then the babies are flying even though they're literally newborn.
Yeah, I didn't remember that at all. But anyway,
and then the kid takes over holding some of them because Cantum's coming in hey, this is my new apprentice or whatever.
Yeah. But I think that the fun thing about this story is that this is conceivably the Force leading Cantum to Lula, or so that's a really cool sort of tie-in where if you kind of trust your instincts and you go with the universal flow, the Force will eventually point you where you need to be. So Cantum comes back.
Yeah.
They are knighted, which is something that they were still an apprentice, but were well above everyone else around them, and Yoda had held it back. Right. And Yoda held them back because effectively he knew that this sort of doubt
needed to do this,
was in their head.
Have this journey.
Yeah. Which is cool.
And they had some big heavy topics brought up with this. One of them being like accepting that you don't necessarily have to pick a path, because that can actually limit you in a way that the Force wouldn't be in line with. And on top of that, I don't know about you, but I personally loved Yoda's discussion with what it's like to train a Padawan and being willing to let go, but also love them in their own way, especially after we've dealt with in some media Yoda being just almost cold towards love in a way that he just forces everyone not to accept it as an emotion. And in this book, he actually not only acknowledges it, but in a way shows you a pure form of it that doesn't cause so much destruction and hatred. I mean, he essentially loves this person enough to let them go on their own path, whether that brings them back to the Jedi or not, and accept that he's done all he can for them.
Yeah, and I think that this bleeds into the adage that, or sort of the cautionary tale of, if you could live forever, would you? Because at the end of the day, the years pass, people die, people that you've cared about, that that you have loved, that you've poured everything into, die, and you continue. And Yoda, he was over 900 years old when he finally died, or something like that, if I remember.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how much loss he dealt with over the years.
So I could see how Yoda could definitely turn you see it just generally. Older people have a different outlook than they did when they were younger. Loss of invincibility, or the thought of invincibility, cherish people passing, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to that, and it is kind of nice seeing this side of Yoda, because I actually think that this Yoda is much wiser, perhaps, than he became. Much less prone to melancholy, much less prone to kind of... Yoda almost seemed a little judgy at times, too. I mean, like, when he was training Luke, dude, Luke is... he's a young man. He hasn't known about the Force. And yes, he's going to make all these mistakes. And, even in Empire, where Luke goes off and he's like, Obi-Wan was saying, is like, that boy was our last hope. He's like, no, wait, there's another. Oh, it's like, you've already moved on? How about you trust in Luke? But that being said, he also lived through the reign of Anakin, turning into Vader. He was kind of defeated by the Emperor. I always viewed that fight as a bit of a tie. Like, no one could.
Well, it was one of those things where it had to happen the way it happened.
Yeah.
Truthfully, because what else could happen? Yeah. The story's already been written.
Very true. So yeah, I did enjoy this sort of depiction of Yoda. It was fun. He seemed obviously a bit more youthful, a little more playful. Yeah. It was cool.
Yeah, and honestly, not to get into a big discussion, but it kind of made me think, no one really thinks about it a lot, I would wager, but Yoda was Grand Master right at the end of his life cycle. And we've been kind of crapping on Yoda a bit. A lot of people have. And this series, I think, is trying to really backpedal a little bit and fix Yoda in a way, which I'm fine with. I mean, I want Yoda to be fixed. I used to love him growing up. But it makes you wonder, was he Grand Master at the wrong point of his life?
Well, I would just say to that you can have periods of your life where you are awesome. And you can have periods of your life where you're not. It all just depends on the experiences that you have had. And I think fundamentally the Jedi Council, when we get in the prequel era, was just fundamentally flawed. And they had lost their way, which led into this, in my opinion, balancing of the Force, as it were, up until when Luke was able to, Vader was able to defeat the Emperor. But between the two of them, they defeated the Emperor. So, and that's another form of balance. But yeah, I kind of hope that we just kind of get like a Yoda book. I don't think we will, but I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I would argue a Yoda book in this. I would like to see 2 Yoda books. I would like to see one from this generation. I'd like to see one chronicling everything he went through, maybe even 3. Maybe a prequel era and a, leading up to training Luke era. Yeah, I think that'd be interesting. But mainly, I'd like to see more of his outlook on life in the High Republic era. It's seemingly pretty good.
Yep, for sure. So let's kind of backtrack just a little bit. So we've met a lot of our characters. We've sort of set the stage here. And we get a lot of Nihil interference in Corellia. We have some mass casualty events. We've got some general sort of tomfoolery out there. And I don't necessarily want to skip around a lot, but
it's disjointed in a way, Well, we have some flashbacks that don't really feel very organized, and a lot's happening. So it's hard not to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really know where to pick off, because a lot of the early stuff with Crash and Wreath and Ram was kind of all building up to the party later, and I think that at the party is where it started to kind of be a little bit more interesting for me, if I'm being honest with you.
I would say everything up to the party, and even part of the party, is just a way to bond Crash with our, apprentices. And it's not that they weren't bad scenes. I just don't know how much you can really go over it. How much it's worth going over, I should say.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we kind of explain a little bit of the political system of Corellia, how, Crash is basically bodyguarding for everybody. It doesn't matter. I didn't find the name of her singer friend. Do you remember her name? Because I don't remember. And I remember looking through the list here, and I just, nothing stuck out to me as being that person. That's tough. That is tough. Because effectively, we Crash's friend is kind of a celebrity, so to speak, younger singer. Her family had this sort of industrial, it was completely industrial music from where they came from. And I believe she had 4 arms too, if I remember correctly, multiple arms. It always seemed to float around and everything. But they had this whole deal where wherever they were from, it was very industrial, and they recorded her singing to kind of the beat of the machinery. So they started this traveling family band type of deal, and they had their instruments were gears and stuff. They were they even categorized them as greasy instruments, So it's kind of this almost steampunky mechanical band with a singer who can hit all these crazy notes and all that. So that was kind of interesting. And there was even one part in the very beginning, even before Crash met Wreath and Ram, where in order to kind of drum up business, she had set up her friend to like look like she was attempting, she looked basically like there was an attempted assassination, but it was really Crash's goons to capture like media attention. It's like, oh, and don't forget to say, you were protected by blah, blah, blah. So,
yeah,
that was kind of fun, I guess, in a way. And we also learn a little bit more about these, sort of sewer worms, which we first saw in Solo, Lady Proxima. And in this particular, they're the Garavolt, is the sort of clan here, and Fastidima was the kind of matron of this particular clan. And we learn that they are basically in charge of the waterways of Corellia. That is their purview. That's the agreement that they have with Corellia in general. So anything underneath is all theirs. And it also makes that scene in Solo a little bit more meaningful when he chucks a rock at the window and the sun comes out, because apparently it's not just their sensitive delight. They can literally disintegrate by too much exposure.
I kind of wish they would have actually done that with one of the guards or something.
Well, that was the implication for Prybolt, because when he was attacked by the Nihil, his suit was damaged and he started to kind of burn, but they didn't really go through that the whole way, because I think they wanted to make it ambiguous towards the end. And another thing about our species here, which are Grindelids.
Now, is it Grindelid is the name of the young?
No, Grindelid is the species. Their family name is Garavolt.
Okay.
So the Grindelid are like intensely mob-like. So it's like vendetta. So if you kill one of us, we have to kill somebody responsible in kind. So it's like, even when we get through to this, Fastidima kind of blames Crash. He's like, look, if you don't find the real killer, then we're going to blame you, because you were in charge of him, and either way, we've got to have somebody. So that was kind of an interesting sort of mob tie in there a little bit with the Grindelids. So I guess let's kind of continue. Do you just want to get to the party? Because the ending is really kind of where it's at for me.
Yeah, sure.
So eventually
I'm still trying to find this singer's name, by the way, as we're talking about it. It's driving me insane now.
So we eventually get to this massive kind of party of all the Corellian elite. And there was a part in here where it was like a joke, where they were all wearing like Nihil gas masks and everything, kind of making a joke of it. And we do have our Crash's rival, who is technically in charge of security, but she was also there with her people and all that. And this is kind of where it starts to hit the fan, because the guy who we thought was killed in the beginning, our founding whatever, our father whatever, was actually in league with the Nihil all the time. He made a deal with the Nihil because he thought that the Republic was done. So he jumps up here and starts trying to, pop off and kill people. And then the rival bodyguard actually takes the shot, to the head. It wasn't even like it's not survivable. He's dead. They wanted him dead. They even said,
and man, they focused on his death for a while. Like Crash was like just staring at the body and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there was a part where it's like one of the bolts had scorched his skull, exposing what was left of his
skull and his brain showing. It's like
young adult.
Oh my
novel.
God, this is a young teens novel.
Yeah, young adult. All right. Well, so we have that attempt going down. And then we start really kicking off into effectively what I'll call the Battle of Corellia. Because there are a massive amount of Nihil here. It's not a cell. It's not 4 people. It's like an army, which again, we've discussed. Where are all the Nihil being recruited from? it was never implied that they were this big in the beginning, but all of a sudden now they're like the biggest thing in the galaxy, which is strange to me.
We have some mentions in our last book, the numbers. It's in the thousands, and even to that extent, you question how much they could do realistically. But again, that all goes back to the fact that the Republic has no standing military to actually do anything. They're just relying on separate planets to take care of themselves, which is pathetic.
Well, here's a question. Corellia is where your ships are being built. Why is there not a Republic presence here?
Yeah, why is there a police force of maybe 150 to defend, realistically, one of the most important planets, other than maybe like a Bacta planet?
Well, we already had that attack, didn't we?
Yeah, and we had no defense there either.
And the thing is that this isn't outer rim. Corellia is mid rim. It's not a core. Is it a core world?
No, it's well, in the description for this, it's core world. Yeah.
Is it a core world?
I didn't think it was until I read that, but
let's discover. Of course, that's not what I want.
It might be mid-rim.
I thought it was
Might be mid.
I thought it was mid-rim, but it's very possible that it was. No, it's core. It's a core world.
Is it core?
Yeah. So we're in the core, and I think that was one of the naiveties of the Republic. It's like, oh, the Nihil would never dive this deep into our territory. It's like, yes, they would. What don't you understand about this?
Yeah. Not only will they dive that deep, they'll also take out your precious space station in the same week.
Yeah. Here's the other thing.
At what point? And I'll tell you what. If we don't get an actual violent response from the Republic after these two events, then let the Republic fall, because they're a bunch of wimps at that point.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit, but also Corellia, why isn't there like a military force? Why doesn't Corellia have a military force, like an actual military, like responsive force? You would think that they would.
And they even go far as to say, like, they describe this police force they have and how easily it was infiltrated. It's like, well, yeah, it's a police force. This isn't. I mean, the Nihil are kind of well past the point of dealing with a police force at this point. I'm surprised they did in such a covert way.
Yeah.
They would easily wipe out any police force.
Exactly. So really, let's just get to the big payout. So the big payout was the Nihil wanted to steal the long beams so that they could fly out to Starlight Beacon and wreak havoc with everybody there, first responders, which first responder is such a modern term. I did find it a little bit strange thinking about first responders, like when I first heard it, because right now we kind of think of first responders as, police, firefighters, all that, which is what you would have here, but we're in space. It just seems like an interesting word to use. And words, words can be interesting. But anyway, so the idea was completely destroy whatever we have left, probably the planet, anybody responding to it, because we're friends. It's like a Trojan horse thing. And our Jedi and a kind of a small-ish ragtag force of Corellians, our bodyguard group, we had one ship, aerial ship. I think it was only one. And then even a master shipbuilder who had a mech suit. And, oh yeah, by the way, we forgot to talk about Ram's talking rat clan.
Yes. The 3 or 4 that he has by the end of the book. And I didn't even realize at the first listen through that he had a couple with him already before the one that they like save from the starlet that tries to eat one of them. Mm-hmm. And they're sentient beings.
They talk.
Like she gets arrested by essentially PETA.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
which was out of nowhere. It was hilarious. Like,
and that was just to backtrack. That was the first job that Ram and Reith did with Crash. It was undercover, trying to implicate this one. I don't remember who they were, but they eat the rat people.
She was a singer. Yeah, she was a singer.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah, it was the singer that was supposed to perform at the party, so they had to get her out of the way to get Crash's friend in there. But yeah, so she wanted to eat the rat, and as soon as you went to eat the rat, the cops come in. Hut, 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 hut. You can't eat rats. You're going to jail for a long time, lady.
You can't do this. I just did.
It was kind of cheesy, but it was fun. So anyway, we have an all-out battle in the shipyards. The Jedi are kind of a bit overwhelmed. The Corellian forces, the bodyguards, the whole 9 yards, and Crash is basically in the sewers, essentially kind of looking for our traitor and some of the Nihil that went into the sewers. And I gotta say, we talked about young adult novel. There's a lot of violence in here. There's a lot of very
drownings and causing the detonation of thermal grenades to take out like a dozen people at once.
Yeah,
flippantly, and
just a lot of shoot and kind of discussing the feeling behind killing as well. There was a lot of that,
especially with Wreath,
yes,
which I appreciated.
And even we'll talk a little bit more about Ram, just the character of Ram too, here in a second. But it definitely did seem like it was very descriptive, probably more descriptive than a young adult novel I would typically think that you would see. Personally, that's just me. But we don't get any real major deaths. The one guy's name who sounds like Barf, I just remember that line in the book. He was lit up.
Which is funny because I don't remember his character. Like when I was finishing the book, I didn't remember his character. I just thought he showed up. In the reread, you realize that like he's replacing Prybolt on this mission, and Crash just thinks he's a total idiot. He's useless.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he just dies. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh boy. We had a Lasat. Did you catch that?
Yes. Yes.
That was an interesting mention.
I don't remember the name.
Doesn't matter. They weren't a big character. They were working for the rival, and Crash was going to try and poach him. But that was interesting that we see a Lasat here. Because the only time we ever really see those is in Rebels, and seemingly their planet was destroyed. There weren't very many of them left. But I thought that was kind of a neat little tie-in, albeit extremely small. Yeah. So during our battle here, Wreath is hit a few times. Ram stows him aboard a ship. And even Comac
proceeds to blow up that ship. No.
Well, we're getting there. Comac takes a lot of damage. Everybody is
Canton gets messed up pretty bad too. Like
burned.
Yeah, burnt, like some bones split. And whatnot. There's like this big javelin sword that she takes some damage from one of the bigger guys, but like she decapitates them. So again, super violent book.
Yeah, very, very violent. But anyway, so Wreath is stowed aboard a ship. One of the ships is able to take off, and Ram, kind of knowing what to do, takes
pulls an Anakin.
Yeah, basically takes it was like a drill ship. It was some old ship that was built for speed, had a drill front end, rams it into the long beam.
It was like discontinued because it was too dangerous or some.
Yeah, it was solely built for speed. But rams it into the long beam that's taking off, takes over that long beam, takes out a few Nihil, and then crashes it into the second long beam that contains Wreath, who is effectively darn near incapacitated, but he was able to get away, which, to be honest, I don't remember how he got away. I just know that he did. I assume escape pod.
He ran into the one lady who killed Prybolt, and like he force pushes the whole group away, and then he just dashes off somehow.
Yeah, so he survives that encounter, but everybody's battered, everybody's beaten, and seemingly the good guys are about to lose. The gas is being released. There's like waves and waves of Nihil. And then from the mist,
we even get a moment where Canton's like saying goodbye to Ram.
Well, Ram was on a suicide mission anyway, but yeah, that was a kind of a feely moment.
That was rough because at one point it's like, well, which one's gonna die?
Yeah, and Ram knew it too. Ram knew exactly the significance of those words. That last, may the force be with you. But in the midst of all the destruction, possible loss, from the mist, from the clearing smoke comes. Oh, and by the way, so Comac can totally blow away the gas. Stellan Geos can't even get through the gas. Anyway.
Yeah, and if you're focusing on power scaling, Comac can't even beat Wreath in a sparring match. So
you never talk about power scaling in Star Wars because it's irrelevant. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the greatest Jedi of all time. Why? Because he has defeated everyone who has came against him.
Yes, exactly. He cannot be hit. It's not because he's the best duelist. He just can't be hit.
He wins. So anyway, from the smoke comes the little green man himself. Master Yoda shows up out of just why? Because he can. And he is
because he's been gone for a long time and everyone thinks he's gone forever. Foreshadowing.
Well, the thing is, people think he could be dead.
Yeah. Which is odd because and I think even Canton mentions this at one point, they would have felt that.
Yeah.
Although at the same time, they even have a moment later on in this book where they finally realize that Jorah's gone, and the explosion of Starlight crashing.
Yep.
And everyone finally realizes, like, oh yeah, that person I haven't sensed them for a while. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Could you feel it? Maybe if you were super
high
connected.
stress situation, they're dealing with a lot, and maybe they just didn't notice it.
Yeah, more than likely. So Yoda wreaks some havoc here. Everybody kind of gets a second wind. And
Yoda's like impaling people left and right.
Oh, he's never minded murder. Never. Yeah. He is ready to kill.
Geez, have you ever just left Revenge of the Sith on loop on DVD? I mean, he's just killing like 1 million freaking clone troopers, man.
He enjoys it. He is the apex predator for a reason. So that was really neat to see. And then the after effects of the battle were interesting because there's a lot more to talk about, but just to summarize sort of the end of the story so we can get to a couple of other themes I want to talk about, we get the knighting of Reath Silas. We get the walking away of Comac. He is no longer a Jedi.
Which was like a bigger hit than half the deaths in the last book we read.
That was a huge hit, but I think for him, more than likely it's going to be a way seeker path. More like Orla.
Yeah,
Orla
I would
journey.
agree with that.
That's what I would probably say.
I would like to see eventually maybe a jump forward in time or something,
We'll see
him
again.
Where he ends up training somebody or helping guide someone down the right path.
I think we'll definitely see him again, or at least I hope. I think it would be a mistake not to show him again.
Yeah, especially with how much they showed off how badass he is in this book. I mean, he didn't get the best, he wasn't center stage in any book he's been in except for this one, but he was just on point this entire book. He's just so cool.
Well, he was bookish. He was studious.
Wise. Very wise.
He also kind of seemed to have a taste for adventure. They wanted to go off constantly, do missions and so forth. Honestly, aside from kind of the blip in the beginning where he and Reath couldn't really talk to each other, he really was the perfect master for Reath because they were able to sort of funnel off of each other. The only negative was that towards the end they couldn't talk, but ultimately he was able to knight Reath and set him on his journey, and now he's got another path to follow. Now, the only other interesting thing I thought here was Yoda brings somebody cloaked with him that we don't really get to know anything about.
They're singing their little song. They'll do what they can. They'll do what they must. Yeah. And in the end, they'll all turn to dust.
And the other thing is that Yoda says we have to start learning from the past. Mm-hmm. So what is the past?
And we don't identify the gender or species of this character. We never see their face.
Nope.
And the only thing they ever say is this little nursery rhyme, essentially.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we go forward, but that was kind of an interesting thing. I don't have any speculation to put on that because this is all new literature, but
Darth Corellia. No, I'm kidding.
Plagueis. It's Plagueis.
Plagueis. It's Plagueis.
It's Plagueis. So we get a lot of goodbyes here between our Padawans and Crash, and everybody's kind of saying goodbye, and we are going towards our new journey. Crisis averted, bigger crisis at Starlight's averted, and Yoda wants to double back to Coruscant. He's like, we're in trouble. We need to go back to Coruscant. So this is kind of where we're leaving off. Now, there were a couple things I wanted to pick up on before we kind of give our reviews and some opinions maybe we can get out here. Let's talk about Ram a little bit. Ram's story kind of starts with him being effectively numb. I feel like he's a bit shell-shocked, a little bit of PTSD, a little bit of, just general shock. He's not feeling anything, and throughout the book, he is feeling everything at times. It's like classic trauma response, because he almost...
Yeah, and I would also argue that he might be a pretty empathic Jedi, maybe like, our Wookiee.
Yeah, Buryaga,
where he feels everything so immensely that maybe just this huge shock of pain and trauma just cuts him off in a way. Not from the Force, but just it just numbs him, like you said, and he's not able to process it.
Well, the other thing, too, is he's not just feeling the living, he's also feeling the mechanical, because there was a part in here before he crashes the ships where he could almost feel the ships. So he's touching things at a level that I don't think most Jedi get to, and he's doing it at kind of a level of not really understanding it. But I thought it was interesting that he's feeling inanimate objects. He's feeling the Force vibrate through them as well, which just last thing here, the Force, we've always been told, is kind of generated by all living things. So how would a non-living piece of machinery have that sort of effect on a Jedi?
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if it's one of those things where, getting back into things that don't exist anymore, when Luke's finally able to deal with Yuuzhan Vong just by feeling the Force around an entity that isn't of the Force.
Yeah.
If it's the same thing going on with Ram. And I think it's Ram, they mention he causes an overheat scenario in this one part of a ship that ends up burning a ton of Naha. Is that him?
Well, before that, he fries a couple of communicators at that party when he starts to freak out.
And the descriptions of that are very, very detailed, which is cool because it just goes back to his character, what he actually feels in the process of dealing with, inanimate objects. And yeah, it's interesting. It could be canon breaking. It could be something that they really need to watch, but it's different and it is interesting.
I would be interested to learn more about Ram's journey as well. And isn't it kind of ridiculous that we find some of these Padawans more entertaining or more interesting than some of our masters?
Yeah, I mean, between Reeth and Bel-Zettifar,
I'm throwing Ram in there.
Ram and
Vernestra
and the comic girl.
Oh, you mean the other Lula?
The
Kiev.
dual Kiev. Yeah. I mean, these characters have been a lot more interesting to me than like Sarek Tarek and quite a few of the masters even, I hate to say it.
What?
Yeah, Stellan. Which, funny fact, unlike maybe I just don't pay enough attention, but in the Wikipedia for this, there's actually there's a lore mess up where apparently Sarek and Tarek are mentioned as Jedi Masters in this book, which is wrong. It's just kind of funny to see them actually acknowledge a mess up in the lore.
Those dudes are catatonic right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, I mean, these apprentices, it kind of makes you feel like, I mean, are we going to have a cleanse at some point where all the masters are eventually killed off and we don't have anyone left and we just follow the Padawans trying to...
We're priming the next generation.
Along with Yoda just starting over.
Wait, was that Yoda's plan? He's the one who kills all the masters to create his own order?
He's controlling all of the levelers. He's leveling the playing field.
Okay, all right.
He was there from the beginning.
From the beginning. Okay. Next theme I want to talk about. The level of relationships in this book. Why is it that
not even the level of relationships, I'd argue it's the level of sexuality.
Yes.
In the relationships in this book.
More specifically, yes. Why is it that we have to have every character romantically involved or romantically thinking about every other character? Look, this isn't a slam on any of the like LGBTQ whatever relationships. That's fine. We've never said anything bad about representation, and that's great. But most specifically, the Crash and Singer thing. I did not see that coming at all. Like, at all.
Yeah.
I thought of Crash as like a non-sexual entity. Okay, this was just, a badass character who is a bodyguard who is wading through the muck of Corellia and who is made this connection with these young Padawans, and she's a planner. She can fight. She knows what's right and wrong. Like, she's just a great character. And then all of a sudden we have this scene with the singer. It's like, well, could it be more? It's like, what be more? Why can't you just be friends? Like, just be great friends.
Well, even the singer makes the comment, like, regardless of whatever happens, it needs to be rooted in friendship first. Like, well, why don't you start it with friendship in a book and then jump into it in another book?
Which I'll tell you what is a great lesson, though, for relationships, because great relationships do oftentimes start with friendship. You have to have a foundation to build a relationship on, or potentially you're just on pillar salt. So...
yeah. Which is something we see with a lot of these Jedi relationships, because most of them are just lust-based.
They're just lust, solely.
Because they're horny teenagers. I'm sorry. They are all going to attach to someone at some point, and they make the comment multiple times in the last book in Falling Star how, masters would just separate them, and then they'd eventually work it out, grow up, and they'd get past it.
Yeah.
And, not all of these relationships in these books are like that, and some of them aren't even Jedi-based, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But...
well, let's...
Here's my thing. In my space opera, I don't care as much about every person's relationship.
Not really.
It is fine to mention this person is with this person has children, this person is married, this person is not, this person, their spouse was murdered. That's one thing. But to dive in to multiple relationships, multiple romantic relationships in one book, where I'm more interested in what's happening with the Nihil, what's happening with the Jedi, and what's happening with this great leveler and the Drengir, it just takes away from it. It's not a romance novel.
Yeah, and we'll list the relationships, but the one thing I said before we started, I thought that the greatest sort of case in point for relationships in this was I forgot their name again, Cantum. Was Cantum's lesson in that relationship and having this great year, and then it's over, and then you move on. That honestly was
focusing more on how they actually grew as a person.
Yes.
Not the relationship itself.
True, but it also explored this theme that we started to poke at about Jedis and having relationships, as younglings or as Padawans or whatever. So that was all I really needed. But let's run down the list of relationships. We have we've got Lula and Zine, which maybe that was more evident in their other literature, but that kind of came out of nowhere, because I actually thought that Zine was more interested in Ram in a way, and like Ram playing the oblivious character. But then that turned. we've had Wreath and like Dan, and there was kind of like some slight. I think you pointed out more than I got it, but like Wreath and maybe Crash and Prybolt. I thought that was more of a thing than it was. I will also say that I think there were heavy hints for Comac and Orla. I thought that
Comac and Canton almost
kind of
honestly
in a way
that they bonded.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was more healthy bonding, but I could see how the inference is there. And then Crash and the singer. Who else? Who else did we explore? Was that about it? It just seemed like
probably forgetting somebody, but I think
it just seemed like every character had to have a relationship, and it's like, look,
it's padding.
Yeah, look, I get it. I understand what the aim is. I just felt that the number of relationships felt a little heavy-handed. That was the only thing. That might have been my only criticism of the book, really, was why does everybody have to be in a relationship? Do we have to have all that?
Yeah.
And like I said, I really enjoyed I really enjoyed Cantum's whole story. I liked the whole thing. Yeah. But the Crash thing felt out of place for me. And I think maybe the hints of Orla and Comac, I found that more intriguing in a way. But
yeah, which, I mean, it's intriguing, but at the same time, it's done. I mean, there's not much else you can go flashback, sure, but there's no development at this point. Obviously, Orla's gone, so.
That was a dumb decision. Sorry, Claudia. I did not like that. I would have liked to have seen her
They killed off too many, and I understand.
Let her be the one that was catatonic.
Go to Game of Thrones, go to all these other shows where they kill off a lot of characters. You can still replace them, but I feel like the amount of characters they killed off in that book compared to the amount of characters they can replace them with that are actually high quality wasn't balanced very well.
Well, look, you could have let Orla be the one who was in the coma, and then eventually let her come back to the Order and be Bel's master. Like, my God, how far could Bel advance with Orla Jareni as a master? And no offense to Loden. Loden was great, but he's gone. And his current master is the one in the coma. Was that Indira Stokes?
Yeah, Stokes, yeah.
I don't know anything about Indira Stokes. I don't know anything about her. I don't know nothing.
The book didn't set anything up for her at all.
Yeah. So anyway, the relationship thing I felt was a little bit heavy-handed. That's just my opinion. But it had nothing to do with anything aside from just having a lot of relationships that it just didn't make much sense to me. Aside from our core one.
Maybe they're trying to appeal to the young adult audience with that, and I can get it. Yeah. I can get it. It's
horny
edgy.
Teenagers.
We're talking about sex and stuff in a book, and will they or won't they? And that's all that clearly the only thing that these young adults care about is decapitation and sex. So let's put that in our book.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I could see that.
And let's create characters literally just for there to be a relationship.
Yeah, I guess. So I think the only other thing is, where do we think this will go next? Where do you think it'll go next?
Look, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Between Starlight and this, if we don't have an all-out full frontal assault on the Nihil,
full
frontal, man, going commando. But
Magic Mike, what?
See, the problem is we almost have to have another setup book because we don't even know where the Nihil are. We don't even know who the Eye is. Well, I guess now we know who the Eye is because the announcement.
Yeah.
They are just now learning who the Eye is. We don't know where they are, how to deal with it. So, unfortunately, they're all on the defensive, which I understand that makes it more difficult. But we have hyperspace, and we have the ability to respond to an attack a little bit quicker than what anyone actually does in this universe. And it just kind of pisses me off how weak the Republic is. And like I said, you can't rely on every separate planet to deal with the Nihil.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a big threat. They're just too big for a single planet to deal with.
Sure.
The Nihil could be easily eradicated.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've talked about this. The clone army.
They almost were.
Yeah, yeah. But like the clone army, the droid army, the stormtroopers, anyone with a standing military could wipe them out very easily.
Sure.
Why don't we have that in the High Republic?
Sure. Well, they're pacifists in nature, but you also jogged my memory on another point that I thought about earlier today, and I'm gonna say it. Get your reaction to it. See what you think. I think that the Jedi of the High Republic are weak but smart. I think that the Jedi of like the prequel era were strong but dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, I would actually completely agree with that.
Cool. Glad we agree.
Yeah, no, but seriously, I mean, and they constantly push that this is a era of, it's a Renaissance period. It's all about learning. Mm-hmm. The problem is we don't have any emphasis on fighting and dealing with the PTSD caused by having to take lives and lose comrades and loved ones and make hard split decisions, which
technically would be the preferred path, though. When you think about it.
Realistically, you could make the same argument on the prequel era Jedi because they really haven't, they shouldn't have to have that to deal with either. They should be about in the same boat, but you have some very strong-willed Jedi in the prequels that don't really have a problem with killing. They don't have a problem with dealing with loss. Well, I mean, look at Mace Windu.
Yeah, it's not just
that. Do you
that.
have a Mace Windu in High Republic who can just take charge?
You see, it's not just that for me. I'm actually talking about Force affinity. Like, the Jedi of the prequel era were not necessarily used to fighting. When you think about it, technically, the High Republic Jedi should be a little bit more because we had this whole Wild West frontier feel where they are out there, they are based in more places, so they have more opportunity for it. But it feels like the Jedi of the prequel era were just, okay, so we're not used to fighting, but automatically we roll in, we're generals or whatever, and we're just kicking butt. But the High Republic, though, it seems like they kind of lack the, I don't know, the fighting spirit. They lack the strength of...
well, it goes back to, like you said, the majority of them are pacifists. They don't want to end life. They don't want conflict.
Which, again, is the right way. That's preferable.
Yeah, of course, it's preferable, but clearly we don't get that option here with the Nihil. But, you know, they're highly skilled with the Force, but they crumble under pressure.
Yes. Yeah.
Look at everything that Elzar Mann has done wrong. Look at everything that Avar has done wrong. And I ain't even gonna mention Stellan.
Yeah.
You know, and think about this. You have a conduit to the Force with Avar. She can funnel the Force powers of every other Jedi from multiple systems away into realistically one person, if they want to. So think about if you had a combat expert. Like, think if Avar could channel all the Force powers into Obi-Wan, Anakin, Mace Windu with Vapad.
Anakin literally would be the best pilot in the world as opposed to what he was.
Yeah, but like think about Mace Windu fighting against an army of Sith using Vapad with all of the Force powers of every living Jedi at his back.
I am all the Jedi.
Yeah.
I said that kind of evil like Sidious though, so that wasn't right, but anyway.
But it's just frustrating how much they waste the potential of these Jedi because they are so intelligent, they're so crafty. They can come up with things that, honestly, if this is the Renaissance period of the Jedi, The prequel is the Dark Era. They're the Dark Ages.
Oh, yeah.
These people are so numb to the Force. They can't sense anything going on around them. They are masters just because of the hours they've put in, not because of affinity, not because of intelligence. I mean, most of these master Jedi had basic Force powers to use, like push and pull and boring stuff. They didn't have these amazing abilities.
You telling me Plo Koon couldn't like conjure up a storm, like a literal rainstorm?
Listen. I love Plo Koon. He's awesome, but no, none of these. Yeah, I keep bringing up Mace just because he had the coolest Force power of the time, but Obi-Wan had amazing defensive skills and he was a great warrior. But as far as like Force powers and affinity, he struggled. And he was considered one of the best Jedi of the era. And he was struggling through it the entire time. It was sheer will that he survived.
Yeah, so interesting discussion. I mean, I think that's something maybe we can discuss more in depth at another time. Maybe when we finally do that Jedi Council debate, you know, maybe down the road.
Rank them.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and just roll into the ratings. So 1 to 5 for books. What are you giving it and why?
Yeah, like I said.
Oh, and by the way, before you talk, just so I can interrupt you again because I love it. Goodreads, not very many ratings, 525 with 94 actual like written reviews, 4.05. That's what Goodreads has it, and that's the only one that I go off of. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in line with Goodreads. I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking around a 4. Didn't like the book at first. A lot of the relationship stuff kind of was the reason for it, but we had some really cool scenes in this. I thought it was a step above our last book by far. We had some interesting new characters. Canton Sai was really, really interesting.
yeah,
Kind of cringy at first. I didn't really like the character until they set them up. Everything going on with Yoda, them leaving the Jedi Order was awesome. Ram was a cool character that I felt like got a decent amount of development. He was a goofy little kid, and he grew up a lot in this
Wizard. I made it up. Okay.
Yeah. Wreath was really pushed into a leadership role in certain scenarios, and I think he did pretty well for, you know, before he got injured, obviously.
He held off hordes by himself.
Yeah. And again, these apprentices are actually showing it's almost like a mixture of prequel and High Republic era, because not only do they have some affinity with the Force, but they actually have the will to fight, even though they can acknowledge that they don't want to lose themselves in this battle and turn down the dark path in the process. We've actually had a couple moments where Wreath wanted to kill a few people. They decided not to because of this. Still dealt with the situation and saved lives. I appreciate everything with Yoda. I didn't think I would. Mm-hmm. I've been really negative with Yoda lately, and this really changed my opinion quite a bit. Like we said, I think we are dealing with a Yoda that's a little bit wiser, not so jaded. The fact that we actually get a conversation about how to deal with love, attachment, loss, honorably giving up somebody so they can pursue the path they need to take, whether that's a path they chose or not, which is another discussion brought up in the book. Really appreciated it. I'm almost back to being a Yoda fan, I think, because of that. The story is honestly a lot more exciting than the last book we had. Like, we had a full-scale war here instead of just a Starlight being destroyed. So it was epic from start to finish. We had a lot of close call fights, and I think the deaths in this book would have been a little bit more impactful, honestly. Even though I'm glad we didn't have any major deaths. We introduced some cool characters here. Crash was really cool. And Yeah, I mean, I just think it was a solid book all around. We did have some issues with the over-sexualization, I think, and the just having too many relationships kind of damper the book and made things a bit sluggish in places. But overall, it was a decent book, and I'd give it a 4.
Okay. So yeah, it was a much more enjoyable book than what we've kind of been dealing with. No offense, a lot of it just wasn't all that interesting. I felt like it was more of a complete story, although ridiculous amount of chapters. I have no idea what we're doing anymore. It seems like a ridiculous amount, and even some of the chapters were just continuations of the last chapter. So it was kind of
felt like paragraphs.
Yeah, it didn't make it. It didn't. I don't like that structure, and that's a comic book thing, and I'm not a big fan of it. But whatever. That's a nitpick. Yeah, the too many relationships. I felt like we could have really tamped down on that and been a little bit more energetic in the character summaries and anything else. But the characters that we got were really interesting. I kind of want to see Crash again, and I think we probably will. I'd like to see more of Ram now. I kind of want to, I think Wreath is kind of like number one right now. I mean, this is a guy that I really want to follow out there on something. I mean, what happens? Give him some time when this guy gets a Padawan. You know what I mean? That would be interesting.
Get a Bell and Wreath book or something. You know?
Oh, that would be cool. But, Canton was a good addition here. Again, favorite part of the story was their backstory and just sort of like growing with that character. It was a very organically grown character, which is something that we just haven't had much of. I'm interested to see what Comac does in the future. Lula, we didn't really have much in here, but interesting kind of start. At least Lula's character, and we'll see kind of what that all brings in the future. So yeah, good little set piece here, and I think that it provided a little bit of hope as well to the story. That the Nihil are not invincible. We can defeat them, and obviously the return of Yoda was huge. And I am far more interested in having a Yoda story than anything else, because I think Yoda at this point is far more interesting than perhaps he's ever been, aside from, when we first see him in Empire. But overall, I'm probably going to go a little higher because I did really enjoy it. I mean, I told you the last book, I skipped through parts of that book because I couldn't deal. I could not deal with it. It wasn't a good book. I just didn't like it, which is sad because it's Claudia Gray and we've generally liked what she's put out. And even in the High Republic era, Into the Dark was not a great book, but it was good. It was interesting. It was kind of a fascinating read. It had some characters and blah, blah, blah. But the last book was not good. And we haven't had a very good run in the High Republic aside from some of the comics. So if I have to read young adult novels as opposed to the adult novels, I will. But everything's so interconnected, you almost have to do it all or you're going to miss something big. This was a big development. This was complete annihilation if it was allowed to be put forward. So we talked a little bit about in past episodes about stakes. The stakes felt high in this. Like it actually built up higher stakes than really, because even the Great Disaster didn't feel... It felt real.
That great.
It felt real at times, especially with those two that got crushed in the station as they were getting ready to leave after sending their message. But we haven't done a great job of building the stakes. But I think that we did a good job here. I think this was a good addition to a franchise that needed some help. And the thing is because it's a young adult novel, although probably not necessarily written like one, but because it's a young adult novel, I suspect that less people will read it than the adult novels, which is a mistake. So I would recommend the read. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm probably going to put this at maybe a 4.3. I don't want to overrate it because, again, the beginning was a little slow. The relationship stuff got a little bit too heavy-handed for me. Just the amount. There's just too much. And it kind of drug away from some of the other stuff. But overall, fairly happy with it. So, not bad.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't really mention, I don't think we talked about at all. Corellia as a setting in general, I think was really well done. It wasn't like in your face, like, hey, Solo, a Star Wars story, Corellia. Aren't you excited?
Yeah.
It was well developed.
Yeah, I think so. Well, what else we got to talk about? Are we good? Have we beat it all to death?
Yeah, horse is dead.
Sweet. Well, folks, hopefully you enjoyed the episode today. We would love to hear your thoughts if you read the book. Obviously, if you haven't read the book and just heard our run through, maybe you should read it and disagree or whatever. But yeah, if you want to, just send us a theory or send us a reaction to the book or a theory in general, or you want to talk about something else, hit us up. We're on the socials at TC Plan Podcast on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We have an email if you want to just send a little communication to us and just let us know what you're thinking about whatever. That's tcplanpodcast@gmail.com. And as we wrap up, I think that's about it. So y'all have a good rest of your week.
And as always, may the Force be with you.